Welcome to Manga Historian's Complete Story Series. Today we're going to be covering Berserk, chapter 105 to 110. I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget all alterations in the panel, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective company. Now in our last video, a young girl named Jill had told Guts the story of Pikoff and how her friend Razine loved it. After hearing Razine's story of how her and her parents went missing, Guts quickly figured out that the demon elf that they faced was Razine. While Guts went looking for her, he felt her presence back at his camp because she had already taken Jill. As she flies off holding Jill, she tells her that she too can do this if she joins her. And Jill says that she's not sure she's ready to become an elf yet, and that's when Razine asks about the Black Swordsman. Jill says that she doesn't really know him that well, and Razine says that it seems that he's on his way to Misty Valley. But they don't need to worry about that. They have some real adults protecting it. Meanwhile, back in the ground, Guts heads into the forest searching for this valley. However, after only walking a short ways, he can already feel the brand bleeding. He looks across the field and he sees a mountain of bodies piling up. As he gets closer, he sees the bodies beginning to move. One of the bodies lifts itself up and it tells him that it looks like we meet again. More bodies begin to crawl out of the pile, and Guts quickly realizes that these men were the bandits from before. They step out saying how he will not harm the children, and Guts laughs. Looks like you quit being human. One of the men drops to all fours and starts to run, and soon the rest of them follow. He throws a pair of daggers, pushing them back, and then he pulls out his crossbow, unloading bolts into each of them. The men start to fall, and as they lay dead on the ground, they begin to transform. The bodies begin to get back up, taking the shape of insects, and they go right back to attacking him. One holds on to Guts' sword while another looms over him, ready to strike down. But as Guts notices the one from behind him, he pulls out his sword and he swings it, ripping through the man's body. The one holding onto the sword finally lets go, and Guts brings the sword back down, cutting him in two. As the one whose body was cut in half begins to scurry away, Guts slams his sword into the back of his head, and he looks back at the others. The larger man grits his teeth and he starts to charge, and he continues moving forward. The man pushes Guts back into a tree, with his pincer slowly closing around his neck, and that's when he begins to spit blood. Guts' sword has pierced through the man's entire body, but the pincers continue to clamp down. Guts fires a bolt into his head to try and loosen its grip, until finally he manages to do it. But before Guts can free himself, the last man starts to crawl down from the tree on top of him. Just as he gets through, Guts pushes himself off of the tree, dragging his sword from behind it. He flips it over, slicing him in half. Guts finally stops to breathe for a moment, and then as he looks off into the trees, he sees more insects coming towards him. They all start to shout that he can't go, and Guts smiles. He wasn't going even if they wanted him to. All of the insects begin to fly towards him, so he pulls the crank on his crossbow, and he begins a steady stream of bolts, one right after the other. The bolts all find their marks until Guts finally drops the crossbow, because he's run out of ammo. Some of the insects twitch and crawl, but Guts holds out his sword, and he stands ready. After a short while, the insects lay scattered about, broken and torn apart. And after stepping on the last insect head, two men walk up asking if that guy's even human. Guts stares at them and he asks, "If you're done talking yet, you can go ahead and transform." The skinnier man changes into a mantis and runs forward, faster than Guts can even swing. But as the sword comes down, he swipes at his arm, cutting away at Guts' arms, and the larger man charges in, catching the sword. Before Guts can even push down, the larger man lifts his horns and throws Guts away. Meanwhile, back at Jill's town, the villagers are all gathering to bury the children that were found after the recent elf attack. But as the priest gives them his blessing, everyone begins to hear the trotting of the horses coming up. Everyone turns back to see a female commander leading the Knights of the Holy Iron Chain. She stops before the priest and takes off her helmet, telling him that her name is Farnese. She is here on the divine authority from the Vatican. Farnese notices the bodies being buried and asks what's going on here, and the priest says that they can discuss this, but not out here in front of the graves. As Farnese and the priest head into the church, Jill's father stands in the doorway listening in on the conversation. Once inside, the priest explains what happened with the recent attack, and she tells him that they are actually in pursuit of the man known as the Black Swordsman. Of all of the things that have been happening, the one common factor is that the Black Swordsman is always somewhere close by, and they wish to find him as quickly as possible. The priest says that he did not meet the man himself, so he can't describe him, though he heard the Black Swordsman was heading towards Misty Valley. As they continue to talk, Jill's father runs in shouting that he may be able to help them out with that. And then back in the forest, Guts catches himself by slamming his sword into the ground to stop himself from falling. He looks back at the two men and he says that they're much smarter than the last bunch. The skinnier man says that they were actually knights once, and the others before him were just mere infantry. Guts tells them that makes sense, and the larger man begins to charge again. As he gets closer, Guts tries to hold him off, but the skinnier man starts to follow up with his own attack. Through the struggle, Guts is thrown to the ground, and he thinks about how these two are coordinating their attacks. The larger man charges in again, and Guts manages to slam his sword down down on the man's horn. But before he can push it through, he's pushed back by the skinnier one. The two start to get back up, and they circle around, positioning in front and in one behind as Guts is standing there. He knows that they're both going to attack at the same time, and he really can't dodge them both, which means he's going to have to kill them at the same time. As they begin to charge, Guts holds out his fake arm, and he fires the cannon forward at the larger man. Taking his free hand, he swings back, cutting into the skinnier one. As Guts catches himself, the skinnier man's body is cut in two, and the larger man's head falls off and onto the ground. Guts falls to his knees, and he can feel his pulse getting weaker from blood loss. He reaches into his satchel for some fairy dust, and then he remembers Puck isn't with him. So using what little he has, he rubs it into his wounds and he sits back. Elsewhere, Puck is making his way into Misty Valley. He starts to see some of the elves playing. He watches as these elves all play with a ball, throwing it back and forth, and as they pass by, it jumps into the crowd. All of the elves stop when they notice Puck, and they all gather to discuss what they should be doing. One of the elves turns back and hands Puck the ball, and as Puck looks at it, he sees an eye looking back at him. He realizes this isn't a ball, it's an eyeball, and he freezes. All of the elves shout that the queen is back, and they begin to fly away. And after throwing away the eyeball, Puck decides that he should probably follow. As they get closer to the tree, Puck figures his cover isn't blown yet, and that's when he sees a flash of light. Many other elves begin to fly out past him, and then he sees Jill and Rosine asks, "Isn't this just lovely? All of the elves are here to play." She goes on hugging Jill, saying how the flowers bloom all year long, and the adults are never allowed here. This place is just for them. So now she knows about Misty Valley, surely she'll want to stay and join them, right? Jill sits back and says that she's sorry, she doesn't know yet. And Rosine says that's okay, she can sleep on it. But really, was there anything fun in that town? Anything more fun than flying? A little while later, Jill sits on her own, taking in the scenes while Puck flies down onto her shoulder. She asks why did he come here, and he says no real reason. He's just here to save her. Jill then asks what about the Black Swordsman, and Puck says that he washed his hands of him. They're through! Puck flutters up, pulling her hair, saying that they need to hurry. It's too dangerous for her to be here. But she doesn't move, so he asks her, "They asked you to be an elf, didn't they?" She says that she still doesn't know what to do. Does it even really matter? And Puck shouts, "Of course it matters! The elves are evil! They attack people! They eat them!" And Jill tells him that they're all so peaceful here, though. If she stays, no one will ever find her. She would never have to worry about being hungry or growing old or even that man. Puck tries to tell her about her mother, but Jill grabs onto him and tells him that she's afraid of what might happen if she has children. Jill begins to squeeze Puck tighter, and he shouts that she's hurting him, and as she lets go, she tells him that she's sorry. And then they notice all of the other elves playing. It looks like they're playing in a pretend war, except it's not pretend. They're actually killing each other. The elves start to rip each other apart, and blood begins to fly everywhere, covering all of the flowers and plants. And then they see the two elves fly by chasing each other. One pins the other and then pulls out its stinger and stabs it into another elf from behind. Some of the other elves fly up with a skewered dead body and tell her that it's a gift for her. Jill and Puck scream, and she smacks them away, and as the dead body lands, it starts to change back into its human form. Slowly, the rest of the dead bodies all begin to change back, and the elves that flew by say that she didn't accept their gift. She hit them! Isn't she supposed to be one of them? Puck shouts to Jill that it's time for them to run away. The two begin to escape, but the mist slowly starts to cover them, and as they stop, Puck says that they need to get going, and then they see a bunch of giant sacks. Puck asks, "What are those?" and flies close to one of them. As he gets closer, he sees something moving inside, and then it breaks open, and out comes another elf. He realizes that they are cocoons. All of them are cocoons! And above them, Rosine says that that's where they emerge. This is the place where the human children become elves. She then flies down and asks, "Why did you run away, Jill? What did the children do to make you so afraid?" Jill shouts that they were killing each other, and Rosine asks, "So? Humans have war all the times. Besides, they were having fun." And Jill says that that was not playing, so Rosine tells her, "It's always fun. The ones that get upset when they play human is the human." So Rosine follows up, "Why go back? The humans are probably fighting anyways. Plus, you're hungry and cold, and you'll get beaten. But here, we can have fun. You can become an elf, and all of your dreams will come true." She hugs Jill and pulls her close, telling her, "It's okay. You'll be a very pretty and strong elf." And her wings slowly start to wrap around them as Jill begins to drift off to sleep. Puck shouts, "Come on! Snap out of it! She's a monster!" And Rosine points at Puck, stating, "You're the reason Jill is acting all weird." She wraps one of her tendrils and hits a sack instead. The cocoon bursts open and a half-formed elf body falls out. Jill looks over and sees the body and screams. But before Rosine can put her back to sleep, she looks around to see all of the cocoons burning. She shouts, "What is going on?" And then she sees the figure of Guts standing there. Rosine tells all of the elves to attack, and with one swing, Guts slams it into a burning pillar. Parts of the pillar begin to break off, burning everything around, including the army that was just sent after him. As everything burns, Guts stares, preparing to attack. Jill watches and Puck and nudges her, telling her that when Guts looks like that, it's time for them to leave. She thinks about how this is just like before. He was a man swinging his sword, but now he's changed into some fearsome monster. The elf storyline will continue for one more episode, and then we go on to the next arc over here at Berserk. Don't forget, if you want to keep up to date on this every Friday, then you need to subscribe to the channel, because that's how you keep up to date on our videos. You can also follow us on Twitter at Mangastorian, and I'll see you next time right here.